Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Thanks for tuning in, as they say. My name's Chris Wright. I'm a landscape photographer working out of Granada, Spain, and this is the second video in what I thought was going to be a very short series comparing DxO PhotoLab with Adobe Lightroom side by side and looking at the capabilities. And the reason that I'm doing this is partly because I use both programs habitually, and I haven't found a good reason to discard either of them, which is a slightly negative way of looking at things. But each of these programs has very good plus points, and I keep, depending on what the picture is, I will use one or the other. Never both on the same picture. So this is the second video. The brief of this video was to develop from a raw file the picture that has already been treated in last week's Lightroom video. The link is up here if you want to have a look at that. And get as close to that as I could with DxO PhotoLab. And the point of this really is to compare and see how easy and how quick it is to go with one program or the other. Now, the gotcha here, and it's one that I only discovered in doing this video, is that it's considerably easier to work to an actual brief that you've got on a screen than it is to work to a brief that you've got in your head. So what I'm saying here is that in developing this picture in Lightroom, I was working to the vision that I had in my head. So it was my memories of the scene, how the sun had lit up one half of the scene, where the light was catching, so on and so forth, the balance of the sky to the landscape. And that was a fairly nebulous affair. So I was kind of exploring within Lightroom in order to get to a point. And I got to that point, and that was fine. Now, I got to that point a whole lot quicker in DxO PhotoLab, but I'm not going to stick my neck out and say that means that DxO PhotoLab is better. What I'm going to say instead is that, in fairness, it's a lot easier to work to it when you've got the image on a screen in front of you that you're trying to match. So the rest of it is just how well do you know the programs. And since I've been using both of them for probably more than, well, in PhotoLab's case, more than 5 years, and in Adobe's case, more than 10 years, it's a difficult call to make, but an easy implementation. So I'm going to let you be the judge of these pictures and how closely they conform. But the other thing that I would say is that this has opened up some more comparison opportunities, because I can see some differences in the picture that I'm not quite sure how they got there, and I'd quite like to play around with those. But that's really something for another video, and we're going to compare certain other aspects of the programs, and perhaps we'll see where we get to. Okay, so here we go. It's the DxO PhotoLab edit. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, so here we are on DxO PhotoLab 8, and I'm going to, there's always an advantage in having processed a picture once to have a look at it and see actually other ideas occur to you that can be done better. So there is something of an advantage here for PhotoLab 8. But let's first of all go and replicate what we did in Lightroom in the previous video. So the first thing we did was we went into the highlights and dropped the highlights to pull a bit more detail out of that sky. Okay, and then I think we brought the level of this rock up, balanced that, and we brought the level of the river up there. Now, I want to approach this slightly differently. PhotoLab, because I've actually had another idea since. So what we need to do is to bring this entire piece up. We need to retain the shadows clearly, but we want to bring that whole area up. And this is something that I could do in Lightroom just as easily, but let's explore this different route in PhotoLab. So I'll go for my local adjustments, and I'm going to use a graduated filter. And what I'm going to do is draw that across here up to the base of the tree. Okay, and I'm going to bring that up a little bit. Okay, probably no more than that. Let's just drag that up. You can see that, yeah. So we've lit up the foreground. And more to the point here, if we close this off, we've brought some light into the foreground, and now I think for me the rock is less of a distraction because everything around it has been brought up. I could take this down a little bit still, but that's done a decent job. So the other thing we did was to brighten the contrast, or really bring this orange colour slightly more out of there, and I wanted to warm up this area here that's in sunlight. Now, one way we could have a look at doing that would be with a luminosity mask first of all. So if I go, oops, if I go new, so we've got luminosity mask, we're going to have a new luminosity mask, and I'm going to choose that area there. Okay, so you can see that that's picked up bits here, and also bits there. So I'm going to erase some of this mask. Okay, we don't really want it warming up the sky so much. And that tree there is going to become a bit of a distraction, I think. So just take it down to about there, and we don't really want to bring it into the rock here, or necessarily into these areas. So just erase that. Okay, now let's have a look and see here. What we're going to do is we're going to choose the orange channel, and let's just saturate it a little bit here. Don't need to go overboard on it. And we'll drop the luminance so it becomes a little bit more contrasty. Okay, so that I think has done a decent job, and the picture's looking much more complete. So I'm coming back here, I'm going to go into the colour, and I'm going to choose a level of green there. Now that's coming into the orange, which I don't really want, so let's just take that away from the orange. We want this to be touching the greens. Okay, so we're just taking, you can see the effect of this, taking the saturation out, putting it in. Now what you'll notice here is even if we take all of the saturation out, it's not going black and white, and there's a reason for this. And that reason is that we're much more sensitive to the colour green than we are to any other colour. So so you can see the luminance there. I'm going to take the luminance down a little bit because we don't want these to start looking unrealistic. But now what the effect of this is we've sort of made this a little bit warmer, in line with the sunshine that's striking the tree. Okay, and I think for me, I'd quite like to see this river still made a little bit more of, and so let's try and do that. Now there's two ways of doing this. I could do this with a brush, and let's first of all try and do this with a brush. If I choose Auto Mask, and I'm going with New, and I come in here, okay, and just nudge that up a little bit more. That's about where we want it. That's too much. And I just paint in a little bit more there. And if I want to, I can bring that as well down here. All right, so yeah, just nudge that up. There's very, very light touch with this adjustment. I think that's all it really needs. And I think I'd stick with my original plan, which was just picking on the foam and light brightening that up. So we'll go with mask again, and we'll just bring this up. We'll just hit the there, take that back to, oops, pull this out so it covers the whole area. Take that back so we can see the effect. Pull that out a little bit more, and then go for the highlights here. There we go. Okay, and I think this is more realistic. This is, it was perhaps slightly unbalanced before, and this now is a much more balanced photograph. Let's go with the compare. That's the original. Yeah, some slightly too much warmth in there, but we can adjust that. Yeah, we took that down a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of taken it down a bit. That's brought it up. I'm dropping the luminance, make it a little bit more contrasty there. Right, so I think it still wants just a little bit of punch in there. So I'm going to add in another control point. So choose control point, choose fresh. We go here. That's pretty much picked it out. I'm just going to release that a little bit. And we'll come down here. And I think we could do this two ways. We can either increase the temperature, and it really just needs a touch, just to make it stand out a little bit from the background. And I think that does it. So I think with this picture we're there. This is looking realistic. Let's compare it before, after, before, after. Perhaps a slightly less on that control there. Just, yeah. That's taken it out, so onto, yeah. Just bring that control point up a little bit. There you go. I think that's it. So Yeah, much better. Okay. Okay, so I think we'll leave that there, and the big lesson here definitely is walk away from the picture and come back. It's always an advantage. I think it's when you get a picture like this that isn't sort of immediately, doesn't immediately say, I'm a great picture straight out the box, it's tricky to know when to stop. You know, there's diminishing returns here. This was not a great picture to begin with, but it has the ingredients. It's just the lighting is off, and it's, you know, it's not a particularly interesting landscape unless you happen to know the history of the area. So, in which case, this entire area was covered in reeds. So that's kind of what makes this one interesting. But I think we've done a decent job here, and I think we've seen how easy that is to achieve in PhotoLab 8. So onwards and upwards. Okay, so that's leaving the two pictures in a state which is largely parallel. Now, what's been interesting to me is there's a couple of areas in each of them actually that I probably would like to work a little bit more. That being said, I think where I got to in the Lightroom edit, it's nice, but I kind of feel that my final PhotoLab edit is better. The picture looks cleaner to me, but it's very, very small margins. And I think if I had to, you know, if I had to choose one or other of these applications, well, I've been trying to choose one or other of these applications for 5 years now, and I haven't got down to a decision point. So they both definitely have strengths. So I think if I were to point out the PhotoLab strengths, I would say the lens correction is definitely real strength there. I think the deep prime or the prime, whichever one you choose, prime XD, whichever one of those algorithms you choose, I think they are still better than the Adobe equivalent. Now, Adobe have really stepped up their noise reduction game, I've noticed, but with I think that in the DxO thing, it's really simply a matter of choosing between 4 choices as to the degree that you apply, and then there are finer controls within there, and I think that's probably more user-friendly than the Adobe one. But again, it really is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think we're now looking at very, very small margins. Where I think PhotoLab could be improved is if we had some equivalent of that intersection mask, or the ability to intersect. I think that would be interesting to have a look at. So I'd like to see that. I'd also like to see an updating in PhotoLab, and I'm sure we're going to get this in the next iteration, but within Color Effects Pro, within the Nik suite, you can control the shape of the control points. And I think that would make it a lot easier. It just makes it more intuitive. I pointed out in the video that although I was using a big circle, the fact that I had sampled on a certain point that wasn't green made the effects less likely to apply to the green areas. But it's not an exact science, and it's a lot of pixels that are being sampled. So I think that is something that I do tend to use in the Adobe area more, simply because I find it quicker, and it's perhaps because I'm used to working with layers and whatnot, it's more intuitive to me. However, I think if I was to, again, if I was to say to somebody, right, you've never used any sort of photo processing before, I think that the DxO metaphor, the control points, control lines, and so on, are more intuitive to learn. And I think that if that was an area that DxO chose to sort of fill out, that would be a very powerful weapon indeed. So anyway, we've got to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've got any questions or observations, do make comments down below. I really appreciate that, and I do answer all the comments. So thanks for watching. Put a subscribe in if you're not already subscribed, or a like if you've found this video useful. And we'll see you next week. Thanks very much, guys. Bye now.